Jubilation in Gaza as an Egyptian brokered truce officially comes into effect between Palestinian groups and Israel. Palestinians chanted victory slogans, shouting the resistance has triumphed. They took to the streets of Gaza after the ceasefire started at 1900 GMT on Wednesday. Palestinians and Israel have agreed to end all hostilities against each other. Israel also agreed to open all crossings and to facilitate the movement of people and goods in and out of the Gaza Strip. But it did not accept to lift the blockade of the Gaza Strip, a demand Palestinian groups had in the past raised as a basic condition for ceasefire talks. People in Gaza say they want calm to be restored permanently.
I want my children to live in safety. I don't want war. I don't want that every 3 years the Israelis start assassinations and then a war breaks out between us and them. I just hope they commit to peace.
We are not afraid of the Israeli army, but in the same time, we want a truce for the sake of our children who are being killed and displaced. The Israeli army does not frighten us. We are only interested in calm for the sake of our children.
Well, to discuss the celebration of victory, we're now joined by Richard Becker, who is the author of Palestine, Israel, and the U.S. Empire, who is joining us now on the line from San Francisco, California. Mr. Becker, thanks a lot for joining us. And I wanted to get your reaction to this ceasefire announcement and the prospects for it holding in the future.
Well, the ceasefire has been reached after a week of devastating air, land, sea assaults, as we have all witnessed. And despite that assault against the people in Gaza who do not have anti-aircraft defenses, who do not have an air force, who do not have armor, despite all the death and destruction that has been impacted upon the people in Gaza, the Israelis and the United States, because we view this as a joint U.S.-Israeli operation, they have not succeeded in what they were trying to attain. Their goals have not been achieved. And we hope that the borders will be opened, at least into Egypt, as has been promised by this agreement, and that there will be some relief and some advancement for the people in Gaza. Clearly, the sentiment that the resistance has prevailed, the Palestinian resistance, is accurate and is confirmed by the rush to the region by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, leaving from Cambodia on an emergency trip, showed that the United States government viewed the situation as one that had become very dangerous, despite all their support for Israel, and that if it led to a ground invasion or an escalation of the conflict, a continuation of the conflict, would have very negative consequences for the United States as well as for Israel. But of course, the United States government is mainly concerned about the U.S. interests in the region and saw them threatened by a continuation of the conflict.
Right, so then, Mr. Becker, has this, in a sense, changed the dynamics on the ground? You mentioned a bit of this, but has this changed the dynamics on the ground enough that we could say the U.S. And even Israel, to a certain extent, are losing influence on the ground?
Well, I think we can see that the U.S. is losing influence. I don't think Israel has much influence aside from its military power, which is very significant. But the changes that are happening in the Arab world, the change in government in Egypt, the revolution in Egypt, the rebellions that have been happening in Jordan, the situation in Lebanon, all of this adds up to a loss of a diminishing of U.S. influence. It doesn't mean the U.S. influence is gone, of course. The U.S. has even vaster military capacity and economic capacity than does Israel. But this was not for the U.S. It was not a victory for Israel. It's reminiscent of what we've seen in Lebanon in 2006. And again, despite all the destruction, what we saw in 2008, 2009 in Gaza, is that the Israelis take these initiatives. They have military supremacy. of course, but then they find themselves in a political situation, and so does the U.S., which is not favorable to them and which, in fact, threatens them. And then they are forced into a situation of seeking some way out of the crisis, the military crisis that they themselves have created.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for now. That was Mr. Richard Becker, author of Palestine, Israel and the U.S. Empire, speaking to us on the phone from San Francisco. Mr. Becker, we do appreciate your insight here on Press TV.